Christmas festivities have begun. What is up? This is the Bottom Line Podcast. I'm Jimmy Fedizzi alongside Neil Villapiano. We hope you're doing well. As always, thank you so much for taking some time out of your day to listen to us. We really do appreciate it. Before we get started, questions, opinions, as always, Twitter and Instagram at BottomLineWMCX and on Twitter at the NVP Show, hashtag BottomLine. Leave a voice message on the Anchor app or Anchor.fm. And if you like what you see on YouTube, please leave a like and a comment down below. Helps out tremendously. And please make sure you subscribe and hit the bell so you do not miss a single episode. And please subscribe on all audio listening platforms. Just include Jimmy when searching for the Bottom Line Podcast. Neil, I can't believe it, but Christmas is almost here. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. You know, we got our first taste of snow probably about 2 years. I don't think we had any snow last year. But, we got some snow. It's snowing a little bit more here this morning. But luckily, no other crazy damage has happened. But I'm doing well. Looking forward to doing more than one episode today. I think a lot of people need to know this is the first of two recordings that we're doing today. So this is it's gonna be a long couple of hours, but hopefully it's not too long.
It'll all be worth it. And we will have another top 5 list for you ready for next week when Christmas is actually coming. So stay tuned for updates on that. It's going to be a fun one, though. We promise you that. It's going to be fun. And so is this one. And by the way, as far as the snow over in our area on the Jersey Shore, over by my area at least, it's ice. Like you can barely shovel it up. I was literally trying to clear out my driveway and help out the neighbors and my sidewalk too. It literally is the toughest crap I've had to pick up so far. Yeah, I don't know if it's just me.
It's rough, but I think if you're able to get some salt, from a store or whatever the case may be,
right?
It will certainly help.
We have plenty of that stuff in my garage. But is it just me, or does it seem like it gets tougher to shovel every single year? Like it's absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, we certainly have. We don't get the world's greatest amount of luck with regards to the ice. So
definitely not. But anyway, though, Merry early Christmas, Happy Holidays to you and your family and your loved ones. We hope that it is awesome. And by the way, I know I tweeted this out last week. Happy Hanukkah to those that celebrate. I know we never mentioned that last week, and we apologize. And I know Hanukkah is still going on at the time of this recording, or it's over. But regardless, happy Hanukkah to anybody who celebrates. We hope it's awesome. But anyway, since Christmas is almost here, we figured why not have a couple of Christmas-themed top 5 lists. And for this one in particular, for this episode, and like I said, we'll have another one next week. For this particular list in this episode, we have our top 5 best Christmas Day games/moments in sports history. Now, keep in mind, this is mainly going to be basketball and football centered, since Christmas Day in sports seems to center around those things in general. But there is one sport on my list in particular that you really would never think about would have Christmas Day games, but we'll get to that when the time comes. But again, keep in mind with any top 5 list that we do, these are strictly our own thoughts and opinions. And if you agree or disagree with our list, or if you have your own, please feel free to let us know on Twitter and Instagram. So with all that being said, Neil, let's get started. If you do not mind, as always, I will kick things off. So with that
I don't know why you ask me all the time if I mind. you do it anyway. So
I figured why not be polite and just ask,
whatever.
It's who I am, man. It's who I am.
Anyway. I know it is.
Anyway, here we go. Let's get started with my list of the top 5 best Christmas Day games/moments in sports, according to yours truly. Starting off with number 5. Let's go all the way back to 1984 with a game between the New York Knicks and the New Jersey Nets at the time, when Bernard King scored 60 against the Nets. at Madison Square Garden. For
Oh,
those
and
that
they
don't
lost,
remember,
by the way, in case anybody wants to know that. They still lost the game. The Knicks still lost, even though Bernard King dropped 60.
Yes, they did. For those that don't remember, it was Christmas Day, 1984. The Garden was sold out. It was a tremendous game. Bernard King went off, had one of the best games of his career, scored 60 points against a really, really good Nets team at the time. Unfortunately, the Knicks still lost the game, 120-114. But the one good memory from the Knicks is that Bernard King had that performance. Oh, and by the way, Bernard King also won the scoring title that year. Mm-hmm. And this was the Christmas Day milestone. That was the highest point total of the season that year. So Bernard King, 60 points, 1984 on Christmas Day is number 5 on my list.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's just that it's pretty remarkable. Bernard King is always going to be remembered as one of the greatest Knicks of all time. Having a performance like that on a day as magical as Christmas Day would be, it is great. Obviously, it's frustrating he's still lost, and that was his best game of that season, and that was one of his best seasons of his career in 1984.
Absolutely. And like I said, the Nets were nothing to mess with in '84 either. So they were a pretty tough team to face, and you could definitely tell the way they played against the Knicks. But I digress there.
'84, they were mediocre, to be honest with you. That was probably one of their better victories of that season. I mean,
right.
That the Nets of the '80s were not incredibly competitive. It wasn't until Drazen Petrovic came in the '90s when they started to get competitive again. But again, the Knicks were not great either during that time. This was just that, this was after they had won championships and everything. So, I mean, it had been a while since they had really been somewhat relevant. But obviously having, a moment like that is certainly nothing to not look at and talk about. So
no question. So that's number 5 on my list. Bernard King scoring 60 against the Nets at Madison Square Garden. Number 4, let's go back to 2004. Again, NBA related. This is where Kobe and Shaq faced off for the first time. For those that don't remember, Shaquille O'Neal was traded from the Los Angeles Lakers in July of 2004 to the Miami Heat. And the Miami Heat were scheduled to play the Lakers on Christmas night. And boy, my goodness, did that game live up to every single hype imaginable. Again, for those that don't remember, Kobe, and God rest his soul, the late great Kobe Bryant. I cannot believe we still lost him too young. But the late great Kobe Bryant scored 42 points and got Shaq to foul out. Think about that. He got him to foul out, and the game was tied at 91 apiece. And it went into overtime, and who led the Heat to victory? That would happen to be Dwayne Wade. The final score was 104-102. And by the way, Kobe Bryant also missed a three-pointer as time expired in overtime, and that's how the Heat got the victory. So that game was definitely one of the best Christmas Day games I've ever seen. Kobe and Shaq facing off for the first time is number 4 on my list. Christmas Day 2004. But Neil, that certainly did live up to the hype.
Yeah, the NBA has always been very good at setting up marquee matchups on days like Christmas Day. Christmas Day is an important day for the NBA. They have 3-4 games that day, and sometimes they have really interesting uniforms that they wear, and it's just a great thing. It's a great way to enjoy the holidays. Watch some sports and see some good games. And that year, the NBA knew that they wanted to make that first matchup between Kobe and Shaq be memorable, and what better day to do it on than Christmas Day. And like you said, it lived up to the hype. Obviously, it would have been great to see either Shaq or Kobe end up being the hero. It actually ended up being Dwayne Wade. But nonetheless, it was a great game. It went to overtime, and it really showcased again how good both of those players were, even if they weren't on the same team together.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was, like I said, that was one of the best Christmas Day games that I have ever seen in my lifetime. So that's number 4 on my list of the top 5 best Christmas Day games / moments in sports history. Number 3. Now, full disclosure here, when I was working on this list and I was doing some research on Christmas Day moments in sports. I did not think that this particular sport had Christmas Day games, but I was mistaken, and I had to put it at number 3 on my list. Let's go all the way back to 1971, where the National Hockey League ended the Christmas Day tradition. Now, you may not remember this, but beginning in the 1920s and lasting until 1971, there was an NHL game played every single Christmas Day. Now, unfortunately, the NHL ended that tradition to give its players a holiday break. You know, I can understand that. But hey, what's more fun than playing on Christmas Day if you're a sports fan? Nothing at all, but I digress there. But here's the kicker. On the final night of Christmas Day in 1971, there were 6 games, and the last goal that was scored was by Stan Gilbertson as the California Golden Seals beat the LA Kings 3-1. And if you're a Ranger fan, you may not have been too happy about seeing that tradition come to an end, and here's why. Their team was 24-11-2 on the holiday, including a 16-game unbeaten streak from 1928 through 1950. So if you were a Ranger fan back then, you probably weren't too happy about that tradition coming to an end. But you know what? The fact that there were 6 Christmas Day games and that last year in 1971, and that the Golden Seals beat the LA Kings 3-1 in what was a tremendous game, it had to go at number 3 on my list.
Yeah, obviously you would think with a sport like hockey, they would have, games on. But yeah, it's been a long time since the NHL has actually been able to do Christmas games. One of the things that they're well known for is having the Winter Classic on New Year's Day, which is obviously an important thing. I would personally like to see them try to come back and have a game, even just one game on Christmas Day. And if you can make it like a stadium series type of game, an outdoor game, I think that would be very cool. But I also respect the fact that players want to be given the opportunity to spend time with their families and loved ones during, Christmas time. And I know how difficult it is for every player to certainly be given the opportunity to do so, even in a normal season. So I think, it's something that the NHL, I'm sure, will probably consider maybe down the road. Who knows? But certainly during that time, I don't think anybody could have expected that to be the last hurrah when it comes to Christmas Day games, for hockey.
Well, unfortunately it was, and what a way to go out, am I right? 6 games, and it ended with a 3-1 Golden Seals victory over the LA Kings. That's number 3 on my list. Quick recap here. Top 5 best Christmas Day games / moments in sports according to yours truly. Number 5, Bernard King scoring 60 points against the Nets in 1984. Number 4, 2004, Kobe and Shaq facing off for the first time. And number 3, in 1971, the NHL ended the Christmas Day tradition. Number 2, another sport you would not expect me to have on this list. Let's go back to 2003 to the Hawaii Bowl. Hawaii against Houston. Now, here's the reason why I have this on the list.
You don't think college football would be played on Christmas Day?
I honestly didn't think it was until I saw this game. I'm like,
oh, I mean,
okay.
It is. It was played in Hawaii, so.
Well,
I mean,
yeah.
It's not like they were worrying about the weather or anything like that.
Just the thought of being there on Christmas, I mean, that's a dream come true. But I digress. That's just another daydream of mine. But here's why I had this as number 2 on my list. Excuse me. The Cougars were led by future Baylor head coach Art Briles, and the Warriors had Timmy Chang, who at the time was one of the most prolific quarterbacks in NCAA history. And this game, it was an offensive shootout right from the get-go. Points galore, all this other stuff. And at the end, it was tied at 34 at the end of regulation. Each team had scored a touchdown on the first 2 overtime possessions. This game went to a third overtime. I believe it. And Hawaii got the ball first, and Michael Brewster ran 8 yards into the end zone. But the Warriors failed the 2-point conversion. So what happens? Houston's overtime possession ended on downs, and Hawaii wins the game anyway, 54-48. 3 overtimes in a college football game, a bowl game nonetheless. That is why it's number 2 on my list. And what that was.
I've seen a lot of college football games, and I've seen games that have gone to 4, 5, 6 overtimes. So obviously it's not one of the longest college football games I've ever seen. But the fact that it was a bowl game and you looked at all the drama that happened in the game, it's certainly, going to be, well known. And obviously in normal times, we would already be in bowl season. A lot of teams would already be, playing in these games and being in, we're getting there, or at least probably in a couple of days, that's when it would really start.
Right.
But, that's a really, really cool thing that I don't think a lot of people would know. College football does try to have its bowl games on certain days like that because they want to continue to keep having games on to watch and have that excitement. And, there's always those smaller bowl games like the Hawaii Bowl that of one of those teams you may not really decide to watch because it's not as entertaining. But what people don't realize is that a lot of the time with the matchups that you get in these games, sometimes you get a matchup of 2 teams that it just works out where they're both going back and forth and having a really good game. And that game, that Hawaii Bowl, was certainly one of the best bowl games we have seen in the last 15 to 20 years, no doubt.
Oh, yeah, no question. What a game that was. And again, the fact that it was a bowl game says a whole lot. So that's number 2 on my list. Now, here are a couple of honorable mentions here. I only have 2 for this particular list. The first one may be a bit unusual, but it is another hockey one. You got to go back all the way to 1941. English, please. The Detroit Red Wings beat the New York Americans in overtime. Now, why do I have this as an honorable mention? Well,
because
this
the
is
Americans
the only
no longer
game.
exist.
What's that?
The Americans no longer exist.
Nah, unfortunately. I wish they did. But why do I have this as an honorable mention? Because this is the only game on Christmas Day to ever go into overtime as the Red Wings won 3-2. Oh, and by the way, this also took place 18 days after the attack on Pearl Harbor. Think about that. 18 days after that. The NHL eliminated overtime in 1942 because of wartime restrictions because of that, and they did not reinstitute it until the 1983-84 season.
Yeah.
Just think about it. To go that long without having overtime, I think that says a lot about how the NHL has handled it back then. Again, I would love to go back in time and find out what it was like back then, but that's just me. But the 1941-42 season was the last for the Americans, unfortunately for them, and it's a shame they had to lose to them. And the NHL operated with its original 6 teams until 1967. So, an unfortunate end for the New York Americans, but still a very significant moment on Christmas Day nonetheless. That's one honorable mention. And the other one is NFL related, going back to 1994, where Don Shula breaks the NFL regular season wins record. Now, this game...
Honorable mention, wow.
Yeah. Well, hey, no, because I felt terrible for not including him actually on the list, but it's better to have him here than not have him at all. I didn't want to be disrespectful.
I have a pretty good idea as to what you have at number 1, and once you reveal it, it'll probably make sense. But yeah, I'm surprised that it was considered an honorable mention. So,
well, again, it's better to have it there than not have it at all.
Yeah,
this game was between the Miami Dolphins and the Detroit Lions, and let's face it, it already had a lot going. Both teams were 9-6 and battling for a playoff spot. And Barry Sanders entered the game with 1,831 rushing yards and a shot at 2,000. The Dolphins took control early, holding Sanders to only 52 yards and scoring on 5 of their first 7 possessions to take a 27-10 lead at halftime, and held on for a 27-20 win. The victory was head coach Don Shula's 319th win in the regular season, putting him ahead of the late, great George Halas. So, yeah, I did feel bad that it's just an honorable mention, but again, I didn't want to be disrespectful and not have him there at all. So Don Shula is another honorable mention there. So one last quick recap here. Top 5 best Christmas Day games / moments in sports history. Number 5, Bernard King scoring 60 points against the Nets at MSG. Number 4, 2004, Kobe and Shaq facing off for the first time. Number 3, NHL ending the holiday tradition in 1971. Number 2, 2003 Hawaii Bowl. And honorable mentions, 1941 Red Wings beating the New York Americans in overtime 3-2. In 1994, Don Shula breaking the NFL regular season wins record. And number 1, Neil, do you want to take a guess first?
Let me take a wild guess, and let me take it back to Christmas Day 2008 when the Boston Celtics, or the defending champion Boston Celtics, took on the LA Lakers. Am I going down the right path here?
You are dead wrong. That is incorrect.
Okay, I got another guess. I got one more.
Okay.
One more. I believe you may be shifting to college football again. Am I correct on that?
Nope.
Okay, so I give up. I'm surprised.
But hey, you know what? I appreciate your efforts. But once again, you have to go back to 1971. The Kansas City Chiefs and the Miami Dolphins played the longest game in NFL history. Again, I appreciate your efforts, but here's why I have this at number 1. These two teams battled back and forth from the very beginning. They were tied at 24 at the end of regulation. After a scoreless first overtime, they went into a second one. Finally, with 7:20 left in the second overtime period, Miami's kicker, I'm sorry, I can't say the name properly, so I'm just going to leave it alone. It's Garrow something. Garrow is his first name, so I'll just leave it at that. Miami's kicker...
Garrow Yepremian.
What's that?
The answer is Garrow Yepremian.
Thank you for
You're
that.
welcome.
He kicked the game-winning field goal. The game was actually only 3 hours and 21 minutes long in real time, but the outcry of how it cut into Christmas Day prompted the NFL to not schedule another Christmas Day game again until 1989. And pop quiz, you want to take a guess who they scheduled for that year?
1989. I'm going to take a guess and say, was it the Giants against the Cowboys?
That would happen to be incorrect. It was the Minnesota Vikings and the Cincinnati Bengals. The Vikings won 29-21. But good guess, though. I like the path you were going now. But given the impact that this Christmas Day game had on the NFL, that prompted them not to schedule another Christmas Day game again until 89, that's why it's number 1 on my list.
Yeah, no, I mean that's a pretty good pick to have. Again, when you think about being the longest game ever played, again, real time didn't seem like it was that long, but again, a lot of people, they have Christmas traditions and things that they want to do, and obviously people don't want to take all day to watch a football game when they have other things that they want to do. But again, we don't have at least I don't think we have a game on Christmas Day this year. I could be wrong about
not in the NFL, no.
Not in the NFL, but obviously that's something that would always, is a cool thing to do if they ever did it again, but sometimes other things get in the way.
Well, I think Christmas falls on a Sunday in a couple of years, so we just might have that happen. We'll see.
Maybe.
We'll see, but
Maybe.
That concludes my list. Top 5 best Christmas Day games / moments in sports history. Number 5, Bernard King scoring 60 at MSG in 84. Number 4, 2004, Kobe and Shaq facing off for the first time. Number 3, 1971, NHL ending the holiday tradition. Number 2, the 2003 Hawaii Bowl. Honorable mentions, the 1941 Detroit Red Wings beating the New York Americans in overtime. 1994, Don Shula breaking the regular season NFL wins record. And number 1, the Chiefs and Dolphins playing the longest game in NFL history in 1971. With that being said, Neil, the floor is yours, my friend.
All right, so here is my list. Now, I will say that I have about 3 honorable mentions, a couple that I don't think Jimmy has on his list. Our lists are relatively similar because I would imagine we probably look at the same information, I would imagine. But nonetheless, we'll go to number 5, and it's the same number 5 that Jimmy had. Christmas Day, 1984, Bernard King dropping 60 points in a 120-114 loss to the New Jersey Nets. And like Jimmy had mentioned, Bernard King ended up winning the scoring title that year, and that game in 1984, when he dropped 60 points, was the most points he scored in a game that season. So that is number 5 on my list. Now, number 4 is one that Jimmy did not mention. I was kind of surprised he didn't mention this one. But let's go back to Christmas Day 2008. The defending champion Boston Celtics were riding a 19-game winning streak, heading to Los Angeles to face the Los Angeles Lakers for the first time since they played in the NBA Finals the year before. So obviously this was going to be a marquee matchup. Kobe Bryant wanted to get some revenge and try to get the Lakers back to the NBA Finals and win it, which they ultimately ended up winning the NBA championship that year. On this night, 4 Lakers scored in double digits and beat the Celtics 92-83. But that was not the most important thing, ladies and gentlemen. The most important thing that came out of that game was, with that win, Phil Jackson, who was already going to be a Hall of Famer, had just won his 1,000th game as a head coach. That is incredible. Now, again, you look at the fact that he had the 6 rings with Jordan and the Bulls, and then he had the dynasty with Kobe and Shaq. So Phil Jackson was already a legend. But the fact that he was still able to get to 1,000 wins when not a lot of coaches have been able to do that in the history of basketball is certainly an incredible achievement, especially in the most prestige and toughest league for basketball in the world, and that is the National Basketball Association. So without a doubt, that was a tremendous, victory for the Lakers to get some revenge. But the fact that it was also the 1,000th victory was probably one of the best Christmas presents that Phil Jackson ever got in his entire life.
See now, here's the thing. I don't mean to cut you off. I apologize. I did actually consider that. It was on my initial list, but I did research. I was like, oh my gosh. Like, there are so many other terrific moments on Christmas Day. Like, I felt bad for leaving it off, but I was like, it's my list, but it's whatever. Yeah, well, I mean, but look, it's nothing to knock. I mean, Phil Jackson, obviously one of the greatest coaches in NBA history. Horrible executive, but one of the greatest coaches. Horrible executive. One of the greatest coaches in NBA history. No doubt he is a Hall of Famer for a reason. But getting his 1,000th victory on Christmas Day really is a remarkable feat. Job well done.
Yeah, and you should feel bad because you're disrespecting a legend.
The disrespect is real.
Disrespect is real for a guy that won 2 championships with the Knicks. Oh, by the way, the last time the Knicks won anything.
That is true as a player.
And then he became the greatest coach in NBA history. There is no question about it. But that,
absolutely,
Phil Jackson getting his 1,000th win on Christmas Day 2008 is number 4 on my list. Number 3 is another one of the games that Jimmy had on his list. Christmas Day 2004, obviously Lakers Heat. First time Kobe and Shaq met up against one another. One of the things that I remember is that after the game, one of the sideline reporters, I think it was for TNT or whoever was covering the game, was trying to get.
Was it Craig Sager?
I don't think it was necessarily Craig Sager, but I could be wrong. Basically, they were trying to get Shaq to talk about Kobe and their relationship, and Shaq pretty much didn't want to say anything. He ended up, I think, finishing by just saying Merry Christmas, and that was it. He didn't really want to talk about it because at that time, their relationship was kind of, it wasn't great. Let's put it that way.
They couldn't stand each other as teammates.
Right. And I think
you think it was really going to improve after he got traded? I don't think so.
Well, I mean, obviously, I think it would be safe to say that after they both retired, the relationship got a lot better. But certainly,
that's true. It's true.
Certainly, during that time, it wasn't really great. It certainly wasn't. And I mean, Kobe was also considering, leaving and going to Chicago. I remember. But once Shaq got traded, Kobe was like, I can't leave the Lakers, because it was kind of this conundrum of it was either going to be Kobe or it was going to be Shaq that was going to go. They weren't going to get rid of both of them. It was going to be one or the other. And, Kobe ended up being that one. And again, like I mentioned before, it's just so interesting how it wasn't Kobe and it wasn't Shaq. that delivered the winner for their teams. It was Dwayne Wade, who is basically like the man in the middle of all this stuff. You know, he's the, you know, Robin to, you know, Shaq's Batman on the Miami Heat. And, you know, Dwayne Wade was the one that won the game. And obviously Kobe, you know, the shot just rimmed out. He could have easily made that shot and the Lakers would have won. And, you know, I think some people would have said that's vindication for Kobe and, you know, things like that. But, you know, at the end of the day, you know, it was still a great game nonetheless. Like you mentioned before, went to overtime. Kobe had 40 plus. Shaq fouled out. There was all this drama, just everything you could think of. And, you know, but still at the end of the day, it was a great game. And it's a tremendous memory in one of the many great memories of NBA basketball on Christmas Day, which is basically, it's been a tradition. I mean, I would say it's not like it's become a tradition. It's certainly been.
And by the way, tip-off is next week, and Christmas Day ain't too far, so we're going to get an early NBA Christmas slate, and I cannot wait for it.
Yeah, it should be a lot of fun. It should be an interesting season with my Brooklyn Nets. It's going to be a really action-packed season with a lot of high expectations, championship expectations, which I'm not used to. And we'll see. We'll see how that all goes down.
We'll see, yeah.
So that was number 3 on my list. Again, just a quick recap for all you folks. Number 5 was Christmas Day 1984 when Bernard King dropped 60 points in a 120-114 loss to the New Jersey Nets. Number 4 on my list was Christmas Day 2008 when the Los Angeles Lakers beat the defending NBA champion Boston Celtics 92-83 to get Phil Jackson his 1,000th win. And number 3, like you just heard, Christmas Day 2004, Shaq versus Kobe, the first time they had matched up together in a 104-102 Heat victory with the game-winning shot being made by Dwayne Wade. So that is number 3. Number 2 on my list is actually what your number 1 is. Christmas Day 1971.
Okay.
Mind you, this was a playoff game as well. This was not just any regular season, you know, mumbo-jumbo type of game. It was a playoff game. AFC divisional round, both teams trying to get to the AFC championship game. And again, the first time ever the NFL played on Christmas Day, it was the first time. The events of the Chiefs-Dolphins contest made it the last NFL game played on December 25th for nearly 2 decades. Kansas City and Miami played what is still the longest game in league history, a 27-24 game. It was actually a very good game when you really think about it. And again, the Dolphins ended up winning with about 7:20 left in double overtime. And though the game was less than 3.5 hours, slightly longer than the average NFL game in 2016, the public outcry for cutting into Christmas dinner and interfering with a religious holiday caused the league to avoid scheduling December 25th games until what year, Jimmy?
1989.
That is correct. So, yeah, I mean, it was interesting. And, you know, again, it's just the magic of Christmas having a game like that. And I do understand with people why, you know, people would get frustrated. But honestly, especially nowadays, I don't think people would be that upset if a game was that long. I think people would actually enjoy having a game be that long, especially if it's that entertaining. 27-24 had to go to double overtime. It was a great game. It was a tremendous game without question. And that is why it's number 2 on my list, because it's just one of the biggest memories. And because of the fact that, again, we haven't had that many games being played on Christmas Day. We went like a whole almost 2 decades from 71 to 1989 without having another game on Christmas Day. And hopefully we get more of those, you know, as the years go along. And like you mentioned, Sunday, it'll be Christmas Day on Sunday for a couple of years from now. So we might get another opportunity there. So now, with number 2 being out of the way, we'll now go to my 3 honorable mentions.
Okay.
So the first one is another honorable mention that Jimmy had mentioned before. Christmas Day 1941, the Detroit Red Wings beat the Brooklyn Americans in overtime. So they changed from the New York Americans to the Brooklyn Americans because during this time, you have to understand, there were 2 teams playing in New York. This was before Rangers Islanders.
Yes.
You had the Americans, who were the first team that was made there, and then you had the New York Rangers. The New York Rangers ended up becoming the marketable team, the team, you know, with New York being the glamour city at that time and being in the 1940s.
Right.
And the Americans were not great. they weren't that super competitive and they weren't making a whole lot of money. So as a result, this was the last season for the New York Americans or Brooklyn Americans. And there's something that people forget, and Jimmy, being a Rangers fan, probably doesn't want to remember, but I'll get to that in just a second. The NHL used to have a tradition of playing on Christmas Day, and this game is the only one, like you mentioned before, Jimmy, to go to overtime, as the Red Wings beat the Americans 3-2, 18 days after the attack on Pearl Harbor. The NHL eliminated overtime in 1942 because of wartime restrictions, and that makes sense. You know, again, they wanted to, you know, get these games done, especially because they knew that not every player was going to be available because of the fact that they were going overseas to fight in the World War. So that's something to keep in mind. And did not reinstitute it until the 1983-84 season, and the 1941-42 season was the last for the Americans franchise, and the NHL operated with its original 6 teams until 1967. And again, the reason why it's called the original 6 is because a bunch of teams that were in the NHL at the time had to be disbanded. Teams like the Americans, the Montreal Maroons, the Ottawa Senators. Teams like that had to disappear because so many people were going overseas to fight in World War II. And the only 6 teams that were able to survive this difficult time and come out on the other side was these 6 teams. The Toronto Maple Leafs, the Montreal Canadiens, Chicago Blackhawks, Detroit Red Wings, New York Rangers, and Boston Bruins. Those are the only 6 teams that could survive, and that's why they've always been called the original 6, and that is a big moment in hockey history. But the biggest thing that Rangers fans were reminded of for about 54 years was the head coach of the New York Americans at the time, Red Dutton, when he found out that the Americans were going to have to be disbanded and that the Rangers were going to be the only team in New York. Dutton was so furious with this. This actually became one of the 2, I guess you would say, reasons as to why there was a curse. There was another one, I believe, when the Rangers won the Cup in 1940, that the owners of the team, they burned the, I guess, documents for Madison Square Garden in celebratory fashion, which I doubt that was the reason.
No.
But
that
this
was
one
not
makes
the
a little
case
bit
at
more
all.
sense. Red Dutton, again, like I mentioned, the player coach for the New York Americans, put a curse on the Rangers that they would never win another cup as long as he lived. And sure enough, that ended up being the case. And it wasn't until 1994 when the Rangers finally broke that curse, and they haven't won a cup since. So I don't know if there's another curse going on right now. I doubt it. It hasn't been that long. It hasn't been as long as 54 years. But again, just a little bit of
26 to be exact.
Fair enough. Just a little bit of, I guess, of a history lesson in case people want to know where the curse came from and why people would talk about the curse of it. So again, just a little bit of fun fact there. So that's the first honorable mention. The second one is another game that Jimmy had already mentioned. The Hawaii Bowl in 2003 between Hawaii and Houston in triple overtime. And again, that was a tremendous game, high-scoring offenses. Remember, Hawaii and University of Houston have been known for many years as being the pistol/air raid offenses that they've always been, putting up gaudy numbers and really just, winning games by a lot of points. And this game lived up to that hype with both teams going back and forth and having to go to 3 overtimes, being as dramatic of a college bowl game that you could get. Because like I mentioned before, one of the things that we have to remember is that you always hope that the big games, the Rose Bowl, the Cotton Bowl, the National Championship game, are the high-scoring, drama-filled games. That's not always the case. Sometimes in these lower bowl games that you don't necessarily watch because maybe you're not a fan of the team or you're not as interested, end up being the more entertaining back-and-forth games because it's teams that are very similar, the way their seasons go, the way their offenses play. Sometimes the stars just align. And in this case, the stars did align. And this game was tremendous, a 54-48 victory by Hawaii. And thank God they won it in their home state. Because if they didn't win that game, that would have been tough to swallow, especially with a team flying all the way from the middle of the country to Hawaii to play in that game. And again, I'm sure that they were okay playing in that gorgeous weather in Hawaii on Christmas Day when it was not cold as a mofo. So
yes,
that's something to keep in mind. So now we'll go to my third honorable mention. And this one, I don't even think you knew. But let's go back to Christmas Day, 2002.
okay.
The first woman to play in a Division IA game during the 2002 Sega Sports Las Vegas Bowl. Who remembers Sega?
What was her name?
Come on.
Nita or something? Nita?
We'll get to that. New Mexico's Katie Haneda became the first woman to play in an NCAA Division 1A game, but her extra point attempt was blocked by UCLA. She later became the first woman to score in a Division 1A game in a 72-8 rout of Texas State the next year in 2003. So we've talked about Sarah Fuller before, obviously the accomplishment that she made being the first female kicker to kick in an FBS, Power 5 game, but she wasn't the first one. She wasn't the first to kick in a Division 1 football game. That was Katie Haneda, who made a lot of history not that long ago. It's been we're pushing, about 20 years. So it's crazy to think, but still.
It's been 18 years since that happened.
Absolutely. And so, obviously that's a tremendous accomplishment, albeit it was blocked, and that's unfortunate. But then again, it would be nice if your offensive line actually blocked. That could have actually helped. But
true.
That's just how it is. But that is my honorable mentions. And Jimmy, could I get a drum roll, please? I can barely hear that. But anyway, number one on my list is 1994. Don Shula breaks NFL regular season victory record. This game between the Dolphins and the Lions already had a lot going for it, like you mentioned. Barry Sanders just being Barry Sanders and just continuing to do well. The Lions and Dolphins both trying to make a playoff push. I think both of them actually ended up making the playoffs that year. Could be wrong.
I think you're right, yeah.
But Barry Sanders entered the game with 1,831 yards rushing and a shot at 2,000. And I believe he did actually eclipse 2,000. I could be wrong. The Dolphins took early control, holding Sanders to only 52 yards and scoring on 5 of their first 7 possessions to take a 27-10 lead at halftime and held on for a 27-20 victory. The victory was head coach Don Shula's 319th regular season victory, putting him ahead of George Halas. Shula had broken the overall wins record in 1993
when
they were in Philadelphia against the Eagles, and they had their third string quarterback, I believe, in that game. So that was kind of a interesting thing. But that shows you how great the late Don Shula was as a football coach. And that, to me, is the greatest moment on Christmas Day in sports history. And that is my list.
Well done, my man. Well done. Again, it was better to have him in my honorable mentions list than not have him at all. I did not want to be disrespectful to the late, great Don Shula. So at least we both agree there that we at least have him on our lists. But that will do it for this episode of the Bottom Line Podcast. If you agree or disagree with any of our lists, or if you have your own list of the top 5 best Christmas Day games / moments in sports, let us know on Twitter and Instagram at BottomLineWMCX and on Twitter at the MVP Show, #BottomLine. Don't forget to leave a voice message on the Anchor app or Anchor.fm. And again, if you like what you see on YouTube, leave a like and a comment down below. Helps out tremendously. And please make sure you subscribe and hit the bell so you do not miss a single episode. And please subscribe on all audio listening platforms. Just include Jimmy when searching for this podcast. The Christmas festivities are not over just yet. And neither is our top 5, because coming up on the next episode, we've got probably one of the toughest lists we've ever had to put together.
Oh, yeah.
And that would happen to be our top 5 Christmas movies of all time.
Yes.
Not TV specials, strictly movies. You have no idea how tough this was for me, but we'll get into it in the next episode. I'm sure Neil can say the same thing, but we'll talk about it next. For Neil Villapiano, I'm Jimmy Fedizzi. This is the Bottom Line Podcast. See you in the next episode. Peace out.